Do you suffer from nightmares, flashbacks, hallucinations? Is it impacting your ability to do everyday activities like take over as crime boss? Do you feel uneasy and unable to trust people around you? Then talk to your doctor about quercetin. Quercetin may not be for everyone. Common side effects include lost limbs, hairballs, and a sudden urge to urinate. Do not take quercetin if you do not have health insurance, as unexpected injuries have been reported. Ask your doctor if quercetin is right for you, because as long as the galaxy has crime lords, there'll always be a need for quercetin. Hello, and welcome once again to Streaming Star Wars. Nick, how's it going, man? How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's been a week, Pete. I'll be honest.
It has been a week for sure.
It's been a week.
Yes.
There've been personal things. There've been Star Wars things. There's been, the rest of the world things. But I can't think of a better way to wrap up a week than to get a chance to hang out with you, to hang out with our wonderful guest, and talk about Star Wars and Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 6.
What an incredible chapter it was, and wow, we'll definitely get into it. And you and I were joking earlier today. What can we say that hasn't been said already? And I'm sure we'll find a few things. I think we'll take a slightly different take as we do. I think that's one of the advantages to doing this on Friday. We've had a chance to, as the great Cobb Vanth said, think it through, which we have definitely done. And we will be joined a little bit later today or this evening or whenever by our good friend, Becca Benjamin. She is just one of my favorite people in the fandom. Love hanging out with her when I've had the chance only on social media. I can't wait to meet her in person in California in a few months, hopefully. But I'm excited to get her point of view. Nobody knows Star Wars lore and books and Star Wars literature like she does. And, the lore and background were aplenty in this particular episode of
without a doubt,
of Book of Boba Fett. So, well, here's a cheers to you, a little bit of a brown liquor cheers. Welcome on Friday night.
Cheers, indeed. Cheers to everybody in the live chat too.
Absolutely. Who do we got with us, Nick?
I see Michael. I see JD. I see one of the Holo Chronicles boys. It could be Andy or Josh, as we have learned. Matthew, if I didn't say Matthew. David from As Father and Son is here.
Wow, we got a big group.
Jeff is here. I had lunch with Jeff today. Jeff is one of our newer dedicated streaming Star Wars ATG cast friends. Dale. Alexander Callis, who is actually one of my children watching from inside the house.
Excellent.
Great crew hanging out, and I'm excited for y'all to contribute to the conversation we're going to have tonight.
Yeah, I did not know that a patron benefit was having lunch with Nick Milkey. That's right. That's pretty wild. That's
when you got it, you got it. So,
well, we'll get to something in one second, but I do want to mention, and I'm really bad at this, so I'll probably throw it over to Nick. But we have a new slogan here: brown liquor and bad takes. And Nick, I gotta praise you publicly here for the concept design for R5 Drink More right there. I think
R5 Drink More, that's it.
But and we're actually gonna turn that. There was not a lot of Star Wars news this past week.
Right.
So what I wanted to do is, if you don't mind, I want to go on a little bit of a rant and a little bit of rave, because I think Star Wars has a problem and I want to talk about it before we dig into the show. All right, let's do it. All right, so there was very little news this week outside of that epic Chapter 6 of Book of Boba Fett, but I think we need to talk because Star Wars has a marketing problem. And I know that's a strange thing to say about a franchise that sells billions of dollars a year in toys, of comics, of books, of collectibles, Disney Plus subscription. The licensing of a Star Wars logo on a t-shirt alone is worth 9 figures, and a search of Baby Yoda on Amazon.com returns everything from plushies to water bottles to jewelry and birthday party decorations and literally everything in between. So there's no problem marketing the products at all. There's no problem, but there is a problem marketing the product. So let me explain what I mean. In 2015, Star Wars roared back into theaters with The Force Awakens, and while it was not summarily loved by all, it was heralded as an achievement of the rebirth of the franchise. The box office numbers were amazing, and there was this feeling that the galaxy far, far away was back. And while all of this was right in line with this feeling of Star Wars being back and the promise was palpable, the first misstep actually happened about a year later with Rogue One. Now, Rogue One has become a fan favorite, regardless of what side of the fandom you sit on. It was the first time, though, that they jumped around in the timeline. And yes, I know the prequels went backwards, but they also did an excellent job marketing that. I'm sure a lot of you remember the Every Story Has a Beginning trailer, and you knew that this was pre A New Hope. But with Rogue One, we went from 30 years after A New Hope with The Force Awakens to days before it. And so we were introduced to new characters in a timeline jump that confused people who are not the dyed-in-the-wool scholars of the saga. And I recall vividly friends and family asking me about Jyn, saying, is that supposed to be Rey? Or is that Rey's mom? And things like, I thought the Death Star was blown up. These are legitimate questions, but it was the first time that Star Wars made some major assumptions about their fan base. They assumed that the masses followed the story as closely as the nerds. It didn't derail them, however, and The Last Jedi was successful as a sequel to The Force Awakens. And while Solo, a Star Wars story, was not a critical hit at the box office, it is a film that is generally well-liked by the core fan base. However, they made an even larger assumption about the audience with the introduction of Maul at the end of that movie. Well, personally, it was one of the rare times I ever audibly went, oh yeah, when something happened on screen in a movie theater. But my neighbor, who's a huge Star Wars movie fan, had never seen anything animated, and he was confused. In fact, instead of taking time to talk about the 2 hours that the movie was, we spent our entire time in the car ride home not only explaining Crimson Dawn, but I was helping him understand the timeline, how Maul survived, all the details that you really needed to know to understand why he was there in that movie at that time. So let's fast forward to 2020. As the pandemic raged, The Mandalorian launched Disney Plus with this premium Star Wars property that was a cultural touchstone. The appearance of Grogu at the end of the first episode in 2019 was the beginning of a pop phenomenon that I would dare say has not been seen since perhaps the beginnings of Star Wars in 1977. And in December of 2020, Disney held their investor day, and they live streamed it to the world. Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, 2 weeks before the epic Luke Skywalker appearance that closed season 2 of The Mandalorian, promised that the next chapter of The Mandalorian story would arrive in December 2021. She also mentioned, when she was talking about the Rangers of the New Republic show, that all these stories would intersect with future stories and culminate in a climactic event. Now, remember that phrase, the next chapter of The Mandalorian story would arrive in December 2021. She knew, but apparently very few people at Disney did, that we were about to get an end credit scene in Mando that would set up the promise of a show called The Book of Boba Fett. And soon after, we learned that show would be coming in December of 2021. And what everybody quickly forgot, or rather Lucasfilm neglected to make part of the announcement, was that the next chapter in The Mandalorian story was coming in December 2021. Remember, she told us that. Not season 3 of The Mandalorian per se. Now, I realize I'm splitting hairs, but it's actually quite important because with a show called The Book of Boba Fett, the natural inclination is to assume that it's Boba Fett's story. And, the first 4 episodes clearly have been Boba Fett's story. But as soon as the story gave us 90 minutes of The Mandalorian, just as the Boba Fett tale was starting to reach a crescendo, it not only confused casual viewers, but it did seem to anger many of the hardcore fans. The worst part about it, though, is that the chapters 5 and 6 from the Book of Boba Fett may be some of the greatest Star Wars telling and world building we've ever seen. Yes, I said that, and yes, I mean it. This is why there's a marketing issue. There were 133 episodes of the Clone Wars series over 7 seasons, and throughout that time, there were many arcs, side quests, character development stories, etc., that took a handful of episodes to tell outside of the lines of the main story. Even in The Mandalorian, there were a handful of stories that seemed to sideline Mando himself while we got to know more about some of the other characters in the story. This is not unusual for Star Wars now, and it was readily accepted by fans of the series. But in fairness, Clone Wars was branded The Clone Wars. That's a title that indicates a bigger story, a larger universe, and frankly, at 133 episodes, it gives you space for things like this to happen. Now, remember, Kathleen Kennedy said on December 10th, 2020, that the stories would culminate in a climactic story event. And after watching the 2 Mando episodes of Book of Boba Fett, it is clear that they are heading in that direction, and they're going to blend characters from different series and different stories into each other, like Clone Wars. And it could be an absolutely amazing storytelling presentation told over multiple series and multiple years with dozens of characters making connections to every Star Wars story ever told. What casual fan or serious fan wouldn't want that? And the problem is, fans rightfully expected a story about everyone's favorite strong silent type, Boba Fett. His introduction to the broader story as a side character in The Mandalorian Season 2 set the fandom on fire, and seeing him take the throne of Jabba the Hutt at the end of Chapter 16's credits, it raised expectations. And it raised frustration levels of the fans, too, when the story of this character was sidelined by the story of another character. So from a pure storytelling standpoint, though, this is a really exciting way to tell the broader narrative. Some of the greatest novels sidetrack to follow the development of supporting characters as part of how they tell the story. And as I said, Clone Wars did it all the time. In fact, some of the story arcs have been given names by the fans, like the Mortis arc or the Cad Bane arc and others. But somehow, Lucasfilm and Disney missed the boat with this one. They missed the opportunity to tell one giant story by marketing Boba Fett. It's easy to armchair quarterback and say they should have called The Mandalorian something with a bigger name, like, I don't know, Star Wars Days of the New Republic, which I actually kind of like. But in fairness, Disney, Lucasfilm, and even the fans didn't realize that The Mandalorian was going to be as wildly successful as it was. And if the Book of Boba Fett was season 3 of a larger series, no one would even bat an eye at the return of the Mandalorian story as part of Boba's struggles to take over as crime lord on Tatooine. I would almost argue that if they called it something as simple as the Book of Boba Fett, a Mandalorian tale, the emphasis on continuing Mando's story still wouldn't have been felt as jarring. So I was texting with my dad, a Star Wars fan, but not a sweaty nerd like me, and he said, and I quote, "I started watching this series with the idea that I would be watching Boba's story. Mando has stolen that story away from him." Now, when I told him the story was in the style that I think it's going to, much like I had to explain to my friend how Maul returned, he didn't seem to mind it as a concept, but he said, if that is in fact what they're doing, it's a different kind of storytelling, and the audience has to somehow be prepared for it and understand it for it to work. And that's where Lucasfilm and Disney have failed. It's how they are marketing it. They're assuming the fan base is there. They're assuming that all fans will figure it out along the way. And I dare say they assume that the Boba Fett name alone would sell more Disney Plus subscriptions. They're going to lose people. They're even going to lose diehard fans if they don't get ahead of this. An animated series with 130 episodes can stumble through before it finds its footing, but expensive live-action storytelling cannot. They can't rely on normies sticking with it, or worse, feeling abandoned. So my advice as someone with years of PR and media experience is to go out and promote the hell out of this series when it's done. On all the mainstream media outlets that Disney owns, have Filoni and Favreau explain that vision, excite the masses about getting on the excite the masses about getting on the train. And I want to see where all the parts of the story are going. People are going to want to get behind that. It's not too late to create an umbrella brand for this time period. And these stories about Mandalorians and surviving Jedi and new governments and wasted regimes, they can have Days of the New Republic as the title if they want. I don't care. We just need to see it done soon. It's going to generate interest in the Bad Batch, and it'll absolutely be needed, because a story like Kenobi and Cassian Andor, those shows which are on the docket, if this timeline and this way of storytelling isn't confusing to the average fan now, 2 shows centered on characters we've seen die in movie theaters set at different times before New Hope is going to be very difficult to follow. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Disturbances in the Force. Make sure to check out the Around the Galaxy podcast for weekly one-on-one interviews with the people behind the fandom. This Thursday, Around the Galaxy welcomes Dan Casey from Nerdist. Please subscribe for regular updates. Follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast, and visit our website at atgcast.com to keep up with us. find our merch, and get information about supporting the show as an ATG Cast patron. Thank you so much for listening, and may the Force be with you. All right, I was on a tear. I hope I didn't lose people there.
Just based on the live chat, there are a lot of people that are tracking with you. There's some really great comments that I think we're going to circle back to as we get into our discussion tonight. But I love what you had to say, and of course, you and I have been texting about it over the course of the last day or two.
Yeah.
But I think you hit it right on the head. I think that there's a lot of other things that go alongside this, and it's sometimes as simple. You talked about your dad, and we've talked about this together.
Mm-hmm.
My dad called me last week after that episode, and it's the first episode he's called me about since the premiere episode, because last week's episode, when Den showed up, stood out to him more than the other ones, and it was a different, there's a lot to it. So I think you're right on par with it. So good job out of you.
Well, thank you much. Well, you know what? As much as I love talking, I would rather listen to our guest. Let's bring in Becca Benjamin. We used your quote.
Picture's cracking me up right now. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
What's happening? What am I missing?
The picture you put up of me. I'm sorry. I'm laughing. I'm too old. I feel like Obi-Wan. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing. You
gotta be careful of that internet stuff. Stays out there. People find pictures. We know.
So I don't even want to go there. So let's not. Let's talk Star Wars.
Let's talk.
That's right.
Becca, people who don't know you, let us know where people. Where tell us about your podcast and the stuff that you do.
What do I do? I do Star Wars. It's a verb.
I'm Star Warsing right now.
Exactly. So I am probably one of the oldest geeks around. Sorry, I am. I'm like Geode. I'm an old fossil. But I love all the new stuff. That said, one podcast that I do is Tarkin's Top Shelf, which, it's on the microphone. It's, for the most part, an all literary Star Wars podcast. So we talk about all the books. Sometimes we are blessed to have an author or two come on, or those that actually work for Star Wars at Lucasfilm. We get Kristen Baber a lot. She's our official third host. We've dubbed her that. So yeah, Mark and I have a good time just discussing the books, and sometimes we go on these long tangents about how the books actually connect.
Is that weird?
To on-screen stuff. Isn't that weird? I don't know, Cobb Vanth, but anyway. And then I do Kanata's Castle with Red 5 Mom, because she's always standing by. And that basically is a podcast where it's rated E for everyone. It's everything Star Wars. Like Maz says, one rule, no fighting. So it's just basically anything Star Wars we talk about, even Star Wars pants. So, which happens to be a favorite topic for us. Sorry, you got to have fun.
Yeah,
right?
we know you got to jump in on that one for sure.
Right,
yeah.
And I also title for the amazing artist for Lucasfilm, Steve Anderson. This is from Star Wars Celebration 4, 2007. This is the Dark Avenger. Yes, I titled it.
Very nice.
Yeah, very, very nice. So definitely check out Steve's work. He's everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. He's everywhere. So check that out. And every so often I get together with Mark Newbold over at Fantha Tracks, and I partake in the reviews, which we've been doing the Boba Fett one, which awesome. I'm late. I know, Mark. I'll get it to you at some point tomorrow. I promise. I will write it somewhere. But so yeah, I just do Star Wars. I've had this thing where once I got my toes in, I kind of go everywhere.
It's hard to not. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. If someone asks, I'm all about it. I'm in. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I'm excited to have you on, and I know Nick is as well. We got quite the episode of Book of Boba Fett. What I'll start with you, Nick. What was your initial gut reaction to the episode? And I know that's an incredibly broad question.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I don't know how I'm supposed to actually answer that, but what I go with is, for the time that episode took up. And, you put out a poll most weeks. How long do you think this episode's going to be? That kind of thing. And I think we were, 47 minutes, somewhere in the 40, just north of 45 minutes. There was so much stuff in this single episode, like literally might be the most single-packed episode of anything we've had in the Disney Star Wars TV era. Yeah. And I watch, and I say this every week, and I talk about it a lot. My oldest daughter is 13. Harper watches with me. She's my Star Wars kid. And so we get up at 5:30 every Wednesday morning and watch before she has to go to school. And so it's just... No, absolutely. And so it's just the two of us on the couch in the middle of the house at 5:30 in the morning, sitting there. We've got it on the TV and we've got the Bluetooth on my phone for the audio so we don't wake everybody else up. Like, it's just this moment that the two of us get to share.
That's awesome.
And she's usually sitting right here in the crook of my right arm on the little love seat that we watch it together. And from the time the episode started, Cobb Vanth showed up and I squeezed her arm and I went, Cobb Vanth. And then, and then R2's little antenna thing was at the top of that screen before it panned down, and R2, I just kept squeezing her because R2, Ahsoka, Cobb Vanth, Cad Bane, all these things happened, and I just I didn't know that I was going to get this bounty of riches in one single episode. All these things that are my favorite. R2-D2 is my favorite Star Wars character. Cobb Vanth has quickly become one of my favorite. Everything, it was literally hey, what are all the things Nick like? Let's put him in this episode. And they ran with it.
It was,
so John and Dave, thank you for doing that for me, but I know everybody else felt that way as well.
Becca, you were saying before we got on, you were watching it and you have your son has a particular affinity for Clone Wars. This was a clone, where episode 5 or chapter 5 was a prequel, Phantom Menace callback. This one was full of Clone Wars stuff. Tell us again how he responded and how you both responded together for that.
Well, for right now we're in different households, so he's going to be 20 this month. So my little guy. So what I want to tell you, enjoy those moments with your little ones, because these will be times you'll actually talk about, and if it sticks with them, it's a blessing, because it has stuck with my son. So I called him because, like I said, I had to get up at 7 a.m. and watch it because I didn't want to go online and then see something, because people get picture happy. It's not even,
and this
the
episode
actual...
especially, holy cow.
Oh my gosh.
It's people just get picture happy. Yeah. So, I called him and he's like, Mom. I'm like, hang on a minute, and we're talking, and because I told him I had to pause. I just had to keep pausing it because emotional overload, visual overload. And that's never happened to me before with anything Star Wars. So, #DaveTV. It's working. My son was like, when we were talking finally about the Cad Bane thing, because it just blew his mind. Yep. And he's like, Mom, he did it. That crazy son of a Biff, he did it. I'm like, I know, Jake. Okay, He's like, oh my God, he's actually everything I've asked for. I'm getting. I'm like, well, I'm glad you asked when you were 8. Not sure if he remembers, but
in his mind, this show is for him. This whole season is for him.
But, well, that's what I say. All this era, to me, of what we're getting visually, it's for them. Yeah. It's for these kids, the up and coming generation, because when we met Dave all those years ago, he was looking at me. I'm like, no, talk to him. Yeah. He's the one you want to get. You already have me. Yeah. I'm in.
Yep.
I've been in. You want to keep him. So I'm ecstatic, I think, because he's ecstatic. Yeah. And I think that, we take it a little differently. We're more personal about it. Yeah. As adults, because we're older, we're cynical, we nitpick. It's a terrible thing. Isn't it terrible?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done this 15, 20 years ago.
I kick myself sometimes. So I'm like, that's
like, what are you doing? Just enjoy.
Up, Star Wars. That's right. Yeah.
It's wrong. Yeah. But emotionally and visually, complete overload. My feelings have feelings. Just even talking about now, I'm starting to get emotional because there was so many things throughout the years that we're like, we have to eventually see this. People have done fan art of certain things that finally have happened, right? Yep. I mean, and not just fan art. I wish I can credit the wonderful artist, but someone did some fan art a couple years back of Ahsoka actually walking through a wooded area and coming up to Luke. Yeah. Oh my God, could you get any more right on?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Just chills. Awesome stuff.
And it's interesting too, because what I'm loving about it, it's kind of what I said in my little take there as well, is that this really is these two episodes, because I as much as this one was jam packed and overload in a way, like it was almost like I find myself like having a conversation about the episode and then be like, oh, that's right, also in this episode we got Cad Bane, or also, so there's so much going on. But what's interesting is these episodes, I think we finally have gotten to that vision point that that is sort of the promise of what Star Wars storytelling today can be, in that we're seeing so many things. And even if you bring in Bad Batch to a degree, you're seeing connections to prequels. So the prequel kids are being fed. You're seeing stuff in Clone Wars. Like, my favorite part of watching this episode with my son, who's 9 years old, he's a Clone Wars kid. I've said it 100 times on here. Like, the clones are his Luke and Han, like Fives and Rex. Those are his guys.
Yep.
And when Ahsoka came on, I was like, you know who that is? He was like, yeah, that's Ahsoka. But my favorite part was when Cad Bane came, because I'm a huge Cad Bane fan. And I look over at him and he goes, it's that blue guy. And the connection was there. Like, if you think about it, I don't really know how much they say his name, so I don't blame a 9-year-old for not remembering his name, but he knew it was that blue guy, and it was bad news. And it was just so great to see that connection. And the first 4 episodes of this show have been for us OT kids. We saw Tashi Station, we saw Banthas, we saw Tusken
Cammy.
Raiders, we saw
Cammy and Laser, or Cammy and Fixer.
So it's now I'm getting chills just thinking about how all of this stuff is coming together, and there's, as you were saying, there's so much. If you want to complain about this, honestly, I don't even want to have a conversation, because there is, like, you can have like critical concerns about the bumpiness of the story, whatever. Sure. But it's Star Wars. If you watch Star Wars, if you are not a Star Wars fan and you watch any Star Wars movie, you'll be like, what's going, like, why did they choose that shot, and why did they stay there that long, and why? You can find those sort of problems in anything, but there's so much story going on and so much delivery to the people who, I think it was Dan from Broaxium who made the comment that, you are finally, they're finally paying off all those things for people like you, Becca, who have read every single word, for the comic book fans, but they're doing it in such a way that people who aren't deep lore can enjoy the stories, which is my a good friend of mine, who's, he's a Star Wars fan, but not like me, of course. And he texted me, who was the man in black at the end of the episode? And that's cool. He knew he was bad. He knew there was a reason we should fear that guy, but it worked. And meanwhile, the three of us were like,
exactly.
It's the guy.
Yeah. And talking about dads, you talked about your dad in your editorial, and my dad's the same way. I think I said this to you before we came online. He called me after the first episode of Book of Boba Fett, and he called me after the episode last week. He didn't call me for any of the episodes in between, because the first episode, he's like, hey, that's pretty cool, Boba Fett. But last week he called me because, holy crap, Mandalorian, and they talked about Grogu. Like, that was what drew him and hit him now. I tried calling him yesterday and this morning to see what he thought about the one yesterday. But again, not a sweaty nerd. He may not have watched it yet, which I don't understand. But he's not at the level that I'm at.
Can you imagine not getting up before dawn to watch this show?
Oh my God, I don't know what we're talking about. It makes me actually, gives me anxiety thinking about it. But also, in all of that, it's the same like with my mother. My mother has tolerated Star Wars because she's dealt with me my whole life, and I've been a Star Wars fan.
God bless her.
But she started watching Mandalorian because Baby Yoda is cute. And asked my dad last year for Christmas, I want my own Baby Yoda. So he got her a little stuffed Baby Yoda. And so it is drawing people in, and it is that mass appeal. And somebody even posted the quote that was Dave from, I think, last year, or maybe the first season of Mandalorian, in an interview talking about, there's all these stories and all these things, but we're trying to do things that appeal to everybody. We're trying to do things that reach a broad, spectrum of audience. And, it's something for everyone. And I know, Pete, you talk a lot about everybody has different doorways into Star Wars. And we've talked about Clone Wars kids. my kids, Jackson, all the different folks that you have that, come into Star Wars in different places. And I just love it. And I love that it creates this place for us all to come together, aside from the nonsense that we usually all just go, really, this is what we're mad about?
Yeah.
But it gives us something to be excited about, because again, I got Cobb Vanth, R2, Ahsoka, Cad Bane. Like, that was Luke Skywalker. I'm sorry. Luke Skywalker was at the bottom of my list, and he's still Luke Skywalker.
It's interesting, right? Go ahead, Becca. What were you going to say?
Because you mentioned Luke Skywalker last, I just have to say, can we just say, like, who else out there, raise your hand, within the first few moments of just looking at him, did you forget? Like, you're just thinking, that's Mark Hamill. That's
correct.
Yeah.
That technology has improved so much over last season.
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, like, give complete props to the actor that actually is portraying him and the whole sound effects of the voice. But there's no doubt in my mind that I was not watching my Return of the Jedi Luke in that moment. Yes. That was Luke.
And if you think about the progression, right? When Rogue One happened, I remember when I saw Tarkin, I was like, wow, that is impressive. But yet the Leia threw me off a little bit.
Weird.
And then even in the difference now is in Mandalorian, the end of chapter 16, I think I spent as much time being in awe of it as trying to figure it out. Right. And this one, to your point, Becca, it was just like, oh, it's Luke. It's Grogu and Luke.
It was very serene Luke. I absolutely just adored it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes, we are gifted. We are very much.
Well, and honestly, after chapter 16 last year, it was so neat and we were so excited about it that I even said, probably on a podcast that somebody can go back and reference, I said, yeah, that was cool. We're probably not going to see him again unless it's in a hologram, unless it's in something else.
Yeah.
What we saw 2 days ago tells me that we could see a bunch more Luke Skywalker in the future. Whether it's Ahsoka series, whether it's, there's room for that to be more of a thing than I thought it could be.
Yes, but attachment is not the Jedi way. So let's not get attached to this.
That's right.
Well, I firmly believe that gallery episode where they spent so much time talking about deepfake technology, that was them saying, guys, we got this figured out. Prepare for
we got you.
Be prepared.
But and also, as long as we're talking about sort of being brought back to things, I also felt like, and I think my friends at the Thank the Maker podcast said this as well, I felt like Rosario Dawson owned Ahsoka a little bit more this time. That really, she captured, as great as she was in that Mando episode, where I always give props to the way she had some of the subtleties. She felt like animated Ahsoka, the way she crossed her arms, the way she kind of looked down her face at things, and the way, and just the way she delivered her lines was great. It was a more mature Ahsoka, of course, because just naturally where she is. But I think unlike again Mandalorian, when she showed up and I was like, how are they doing this? What am I looking for? I just accepted it, and it washed. And maybe that's why this episode worked so well, because all the things that were in it, we just let wash over us instead of trying to figure it out. We were excited to see R2 instead of trying to decide why he's there or what's happening. We're just like, wow, it was seeing old friends, right? So
yes, and I actually am so glad JD put this here, because I took pages and pages of notes that I have here. And since we're on Ahsoka, I'd love to say yes. I did catch the old friend of the family line, but I want to know if anyone else was really paying attention, because as Luke says in The Last Jedi, it's so much bigger. There's hints with this dialogue in between, not only Ahsoka and Luke, but Ahsoka and Din, on attachment and detachment. And there's a lot of hearkening back to conversations of Anakin and Shmi, Anakin and Padme, all within the Ahsoka dialogue. And I want to go there because
please.
Yeah, let me find it first.
The line,
of all,
well, you looked that up. The line
of notes.
The line that stuck to me and was like a hammer, and I'm surprised we haven't seen more of it in discussion. I'm sure you have, Rebecca. Is when he said, "Will I ever see you again?"
Yes, that's the one. It's right
here.
So that is exactly what Anakin says to Shmi.
Right.
That's
Will
exactly
I see you
what
again?
He says.
And I want to stop on that. If you've noticed, when Din even says, I'm looking for Skywalker, and she refers to him as Master Luke, you realize she won't go there. Because Master Skywalker puts an attachment onto Luke because of how she felt about her master. So she's differentiating and separating at the same time. And that's huge because of who she is, because she claims that she's no longer a Jedi. So it's interesting to see this with her. She's keeping that space. Luke, on the other hand, obviously has a problem with different, keeping them separate, because we see this with him and with her. But she goes on and she also says things to Din, making him think, even though he's not a Jedi. I love her conversation with him about, are you doing this for Grogu, or are you doing this for yourself?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's huge, because then you get that heartwarming fatherly tone of, I came all this way.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it takes real love for him to say, okay, make sure that he gets this. And he leaves. I mean, that takes...
It's like driving to your kid's college to drop off something, and you're just like, you know what? He's having fun. I'm not going to interrupt.
And there's a moment, and I didn't save it as one... Yes. That's exactly what Shmi does. And there was a moment, and I didn't save it as one of our screenshots, but there's a moment when Din decides to go ahead and leave, and the ship is rising up to leave, and Grogu is in the backpack, and he holds the hand up like he knows. Like
he feels
he
him.
has that moment. Yeah. And I, as a parent, I'm like, like it hit me.
Oh, it's
for sure.
Yeah, and those conversations, she also says to Din, which I absolutely love, because this is another going back to the Phantom Menace. She's talking about his gift, and she goes, so you want this, basically she's saying, so you want him to have this to remember you?
Yeah.
Now, Anakin says to Shmi, I made this so you'll remember me. And she's like, well, I don't need this to, So again, Dave is pulling all those heartstrings back from the Phantom Menace. And, keep in mind, back during those prequel times, Dave was one of us. Yeah. He was dressing up, cosplaying, waiting in line to get to these movies. He's doing all the things, bringing all the things that he loves to the forefront because, that's what George would do. He's telling his version of the story. I mean, yes, he wants us to be happy, but I don't think that's in his mindset. George was always like, I'm telling the story I want. I don't care what anyone else thinks.
Well, and I think to that end, I think there's two amazing things about this episode that are pure Filoni. First of all, Filoni in 3 episodes of being a director we've seen him accelerate in his skills. We'll get to the Cad Bane bit in a couple seconds, but that OK Corral moment was perfect. But the other thing is the writing in this. Every single line has gravitas and weight, and right down to the title, because you start the episode by calling it From the Desert Comes a Stranger, and you see Cobb Vanth, and you're like, oh, cool. But the Desert Comes a Stranger is not Cobb Vanth. No. It's the Pike hitman, Cad Bane, but that's the brilliant piece. Every single line is given weight. Everything that Ahsoka says, everything that Luke says to Grogu, the way, again, another one of my favorite callbacks is the way he modern English is the do or do not, there is no try.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And he even says, my old master, he spoke in rhymes.
Riddles.
Yeah.
Or riddles,
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and even tying to that with the Luke and Ahsoka moment in that conversation, 2 things, of course, that stood out is the way she looks at Luke and she says, so much like your father.
Yes.
Hits all of us in the feels.
Yep.
But the other one that hit me so much, or not hit me as much as a line, but was after last season of Mandalorian, when we get the Ahsoka episode and then we get Luke at the end of it, what that told us, and the biggest thing that I feel like I had campaigned for in podcasts, in whatever it was that we did, was I wanted 5 minutes of Ahsoka talking about Anakin and Luke having the opportunity to tell Anakin, no, you don't know, he came back. Like, I wanted to see that. What we see in this episode is they've had that conversation already.
Yeah.
Because there's a familiarity there. But what I love about it, and is what you said, Becca, is the way he says, will I ever see you again? Like, there's familiarity, but not that
Yes.
much. Like they're still figuring each other out. And I think we could still get it down the road. But I like, even then, knowing they've had that conversation did so much for my heart.
Right. And this is where Dave is brilliant, because Dave has spent so many years under the Master, and there is a moment, and I can't believe, well, then again, it's early. No one's going to talk about this stuff yet. But this is where Dave is just awesome, because he's been through how many different storylines of Star Wars, right? So where you said that we know Ahsoka and Luke obviously had that conversation. The moment Luke is training with Grogu is trying to balance on the bamboo branch, and Luke is going through the techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Think where you've seen that before. Rebels. Yep. Ahsoka showing the hologram video of Anakin's saber technique to Ezra, saying how amazing he is. And she goes, if only you knew.
Yeah.
That, if you watch him, it's the same exact technique. Where has he seen that?
I was going to say, so you're saying that
Ahsoka showed that to him, just like she
Yeah.
will show Ezra, or has showed Ezra, yes.
Yeah. Amazing.
It's so...
I noticed it right away. I started to cry. I'm like, that's it. I swear those are the same movements. Because where else would he learn it? Come on.
Yeah, right.
So well, let's take one of the Luke lines, because it's an important one to me, and I think it says a lot about, and it puts a lot of question ahead of Grogu, is when he says, I'm not sure if his heart is in it. And when Ahsoka said, the first time I watched the episode, when Ahsoka said, so much like your father, I thought she meant Luke, right? Sort of doubting what's happening and whatever. But it's Grogu who's so much like his father, meaning that is his heart in it? Where does he want to be? Where does his connection want to be? Because she witnessed Mandalorian's connection, and she's seen what connection did to Anakin. And I mean, Grogu has grown up. First of all, we got his amazing flashback scene, and I really hope those were actual 501st guys in Clone Trooper outfits, because it would be great that is finally on screen.
I think they were physical outfits.
They looked like
yeah,
it.
they really did. And
But
I didn't like seeing that. It brought too many. Just his face. Maybe he didn't want to remember that.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Yep.
Well, the things that he's remembering, the things that he's been exposed to as the charge of the Mandalorian, as his little tag along, he has learned that violence and aggression are an appropriate response. And when he was being attacked by the probe, the training probe, and he crushed it, or he tried to crush it and drop it, that's a dark side approach to things. And Luke didn't say that was wrong. In fact, Luke actually says that was good.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Grogu is in a very confused state. And you got to figure, a child, and that was one of the things I got from Mandalorian more than anything else as a parent, is that kid is watching everything he does. My kid's watching everything I do. If I react angrily to something, that's the way to do it. And that's why he almost killed Cara Dune when they were arm wrestling, right? Because he thought she was hurting his dad, and he was going to do. And so there's a lot for him to learn. So if he does leave Luke, he's in a dangerous spot. He's in that gray area. What are your thoughts on that?
You asking me?
Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm asking the world.
That's something I've really been thinking about. Where is Grogu's heart? Simply put, Grogu's heart is with Din. Just as Din's heart is with Grogu. I mean, in that Ahsoka episode in The Mandalorian, I don't remember if it was Ahsoka, if it was Din who said it, but I think it was Din when he says a Jedi and a Mandalorian, they won't expect this.
They never see it coming.
Or they never see it coming. And I'm thinking, and we get all these stories of, from the armorer saying that the Jedi, they don't, there's no attachments allowed. And, Din says, well, that's the opposite of our creed. Both him and Grogu are stuck in this limbo of trying to adhere to their religion. But yet neither one really feel like, you can see it. They both really feel like that's really not for me. It's like a self-discovery adventure that they're both on through their heart, and which we get to see Rey do in the sequels is, who am I?
Yeah.
It's not about where I was, but who am I? Who should I be? And I think that whole line about they'll never see it coming, I think that's a setup for them, because
Yes.
I don't think just because the Jedi are Grogu's people and the Mandalorian is, his religion, I don't think that's necessarily where they need to be.
Right.
I think they just need to be together.
Well, and I think that this is why one of the first texts I sent to, so the very short version of the story, I woke up at 3 a.m. for some reason, and on the East Coast, and my first response, I looked at my phone and I was like, I'm just going to go back to sleep. I'll get up. And then I was like, no, I watched it. And then I saw my friend Jerry was on as well. So I texted him, and my first question was, are they setting up Yoda to be the Mandalore, right? Or baby Grogu, because he's Jedi and he's Mandalorian.
He's both.
And it's interesting because that's why I put these 2 episodes together. And I know that if you take 2 episodes together, look, that's 90 minutes. It's like a movie. We got so much important lore. We got so much information.
Mm-hmm.
Grogu is in a spot where he's got Jedi abilities. But the question then is, what is Din's role in this? And is his role, I still believe that at the end of this gigantic story that we're going to get, he will be the ruler of Mandalore. Din will be. But maybe it's Grogu, right? He's got the armor now, maybe, right?
On that note, on what you're saying, remember what Luke tells Grogu with the choice, which I want to get to, by the way, is a short time for you is a lifetime for someone else.
Yep.
Yes. That
so
was huge.
let Din rule, but then, like Leia, leaving her saber behind, so someone else will pick up the legacy.
Yep.
Yeah.
That could be it too. Maybe they're going to form their own little legacy.
Well, and that's one of the things that I feel like has been kind of not mentioned much. And it was great to hear it in chapter 5 when he said that, he is a Mandalorian foundling now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their clan of 2 is a clan, right? They are so in that, from that regard, baby Yoda Grogu is a Mandalorian, just as much as we still have all the legends about Boba Fett not really being a Mandalorian, blah blah blah, but clearly being adopted by a Mandalorian sect makes you Mandalorian. So he is Mandalorian.
Yeah, he's a foundling. So yeah, but maybe he's a Padawan.
Right.
we just don't know yet. But yeah, I love this because this is when it gets all kind of the whole story of Star Wars. And I've always said this within writing, and Pete, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The 3 C's of writing with a protagonist is change, choice, and cost. Because something shifts, they make a choice, but no matter what choice it is, there's a consequence to bear. We see this with Luke. We see this with Anakin, obviously, which is the most prominent. We see this with Leia, even not telling Ben, and look where that leads. And, every choice, leads to something. And this choice that Grogu will have to make, which I just can't see how he can make it with on the fly. He's got to think this through, right?
Yep.
It's too much to think about, and a lot, because it won't just affect him. It will impact the entire galaxy. We've seen this in Star Wars. That's how it rolls. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
So, but the thing is interesting here is Luke is doing something that Obi-Wan would never do.
Yeah.
And that is he is giving Grogu a choice, which brings me back to the Phantom Menace again with Shmi and Anakin, because, he doesn't know what to do at the time.
Right.
And I know I wrote it down, so I have the exact quote. So let me see if I can find that. Oh, here. Shmi says to Anakin, "Anakin, this path has been placed before you. The choice is yours alone." So this is only something just like Grogu. Only he can decide this.
Right.
But again, he's going to make a choice, and will it be one for himself? Kind of like how Ahsoka was asking Din.
Right.
Or are you choosing for Din? Who are you choosing for? And a Jedi chooses selflessly. They think of the greater good. So supposedly, right? That's the way it is. But I do want to say, without spoiling things, in the High Republic, there's a novel that just came out, Midnight Horizon. There's interludes in there. Yoda is not the stern master that we think of. He has done something similar, and that's all I'm going to say when it comes to a choice for a Padawan. So This is something maybe Luke picked up from those Jedi texts.
So that's an interesting point. So Luke had the weekend with Yoda where he became a Jedi Master over the weekend.
Sorry.
And then from there, he has become. It's like learning to become a surgeon by only reading books, right? He has taken these Jedi texts, and that's what the biggest question that I had walking out of this was Luke, who has seen what attachment, or the son of Anakin, who was destroyed by attachment because he followed those rules, or destroyed by having to be detached, rather.
Right.
Luke, who saw the good in his father and that connection. Ahsoka, who before this all happened tried to bring Vader back. They're still playing by those rules of you need to make attachment is forbidden. You need to make a choice, and that's interesting to me. And I'm wondering if this is a setup so that we see Luke's either first mistake as a Jedi Master, to say, nope, attachment, we're going to follow these rules. These are the rules. And that's what brings the Jedi down. And again, everybody who loves The Mandalorian but doesn't like The Last Jedi, go watch The Last Jedi, because Luke knows why the Jedi failed. He talks about it at length. Is this his first failure as a Jedi Master, or is this his first win? Does he say, okay, Grogu, yeah, you can't make this choice. It's impossible to ask you to make this choice. Can we find some sort of hybrid, some sort of bending of the rules?
Some sort of balance.
Yeah. Balance. Yeah. What an idea. What a concept, right?
Sorry.
No, it's right on. All right. So where do we go we could go on forever there. There's a couple.
Someone asked about the saber, and I do want to talk about
what was the question about the saber?
Yes.
Whether or not it, how did Luke get Yoda's Revenge of the Sith saber? It's not that saber.
It's not that.
Here's the thing. I know Matt Martin had some tweets out there about this going on. Also, years ago, Charles Soule had some on, because he did a comic of Vader in 2017, the Vader comics, where Sheev, my good buddy Sheev, he had a lightsaber kiln, sort of, where they just threw them all in there, and they tossed Yoda's Revenge of the Sith saber in there. So that fizzled and died. So here's the thing. And I meditated on this, because this really just, again, being a cynical old person, was one of those things like, how does this work? What are you guys doing to me that doesn't make sense? Because as a literary Star Wars podcaster, it was like, it doesn't go. Right. So I meditated, and it dawned on me, in Attack of the Clones, Anakin breaks his saber, and he's like, oh, not again. Obi-Wan's going to kill me. Anakin broke 2 to 3 sabers in the amount of in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Okay, and that's only in 3 years.
Yep.
Yoda lived 900 years.
Right.
Correct.
He's had more than
one.
He
had a bunch of sabers.
Yep.
So there's a High Republic saber, which is slightly different from the one we see him use in Revenge of the Sith. Actually, it's on the latest The High Republic Marvel comic.
Okay.
Actually, him holding it. And it's slightly different. So it's quite possible that saber's the one that Luke has, when he's searching for his relics. Red 5 Mom, giving you a little thumbs up there. There's a book that was written, I think, in 2016, 2017.
Yes.
The Legends of Luke Skywalker. He's searching for relics, searching for more Force lore. How do you know he didn't find something then? Or how do you know Ahsoka didn't have it some way, somehow, or knew where to find it? How do you know Maz didn't have more than one in a box?
Yeah.
I even thought as an OT kid, he was in Yoda's hut when Yoda died and disappeared. And before he left, did he not go, well, he's gone. Maybe I should check and see, are there any mementos, any other thing? Not that he was pillaging, but he's about to leave the place that his, like Pete said, weekend master, his house, should I take anything with me? And that was honestly where
stew.
The stew was fine, but what more less perishable items should we take with us?
Right. Oh, it's possible. Yeah. I don't know, because, the way George wrote, Yoda for The Empire Strikes Back, if you look at all of his quotes, wars do not make one great.
Yep. Right.
He was no longer the warrior Jedi. He was, the Force is my ally, and what a powerful ally it is. It was all within the Force. There was no weapons. He even tells Luke when he goes into the cave, weapons, you will not need them.
Yeah.
So
only what you take
he
with you.
left that behind, which is noted too. I think actually, Pete, you had it on your Twitter that it was noted that a lot of Jedi after the purge of Order 66 laid down their weapons and started doing other things because, two wrongs don't make a right. Having more war, how is that solving anything?
Right.
A lot of them that were left and didn't want to be obviously discovered laid down their sabers. Yeah. So it's possible that, like I said, this is an older saber. I actually reached out to Wikipedia, Book Official, and I even said, I go, just want to clarify, this is not the Revenge of the Sith saber. They said, no, it is not. It is a different saber.
Yeah.
And what, we don't know which era it's from. That is yet to be seen. So
yeah,
I'm going with High Republic.
I love that. I mean, the fact that the dude's 900 years old.
There's going to be a handful of sabers along the way.
Right.
I'm sure he's broke a few too. Anakin can't be the only student that ever broke a lightsaber.
Exactly.
So
things happen. It's just the way life works.
Exactly.
So, again, let's talk briefly about what happened when we got back to Tatooine, which was, this is where we're setting up, and this will also probably bring us into our conversation about what we think we're going to see. And the reality is, every single week we've been wrong, so that's good. But we saw, interestingly, and so listen, hear me out on this. Tell me what you think. I sent this over to Nick. What are the chances that Ming-Na and Tamora Morrison had no idea about those other two episodes? Because first of all, I feel like there were tons and tons of interviews during the first 4 episodes. They showed it like it was on every single, every time I opened up Twitter, it was another article, another interview with Ming-Na or another article with Tem. Nothing about these. So I feel like they didn't know these were happening. But what I'm thinking is the fact that Boba doesn't even have a single line in this. I feel like it was some sort of a pickup shot or some sort of a shot to make the connection. Like they kind of got back and were like, oh, we didn't make the connection between the Boba saying Boba and Ming-Na saying Fennec saying we need to build this army. So I feel like that was kind of a composite shot because he doesn't say anything. Doesn't really matter. Just an observation in storytelling and story creating. Yeah, he just stood there and looked at the map and was like, yeah, that's not going to be easy. But then we go back to Cobb Vanth, and Cobb's story in this is fantastic. What I want to ask you guys, what do you think he was going to tell his townspeople before Cad Bane showed up? Because he was confident that he was going to be able to, even though it's a city folk fight, he was confident he was going to be able to get his villagers to be a part of this fight. Where do you think because I had no idea what he could possibly say at that moment.
Becca's got notes. Let's go, Becca.
I do. First of all, there's an interesting, as a writer, there's an interesting inverse parallel here. The Marshal, Cobb Vanth, first of all, just having him on screen is a Star Wars book podcaster's dream.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
And after I've told you this, Aftermath is my favorite Star Wars book.
See?
And
Chuck, I love Chuck.
As a hardcore Deadwood and hardcore Justified person, like Timothy Oliphant, like this is everything in my life.
It's all
swirled
happening
into one. Like I'm so
right?
Cobb Vanth is at the top of my list.
Well, here's my thing. So first of all, inverse parallel. Ready for this, Pete?
I'm ready. Bring it.
Ready. Okay, so Cobb Vanth and the Weequay, I don't know his name, the bartender, the Weequay.
Yes.
They say that they renamed the town Freetown.
Freetown. Yep.
Love it. It's a play on Rebels, Lothal, Camp 43, Tarkin Town.
Yeah.
You hear it now? Yep. Remember that?
Yep.
So one was on the oppression side of rule.
Yep.
Freetown is free. It's a democracy. They all live in harmony.
Yep.
I just only Dave, Yeah. So anyway, I had to point that out.
Yep.
So anyway, I do think that he was going to actually bring them together and talk to them about what's going on because he does know. Din told him, you may be Freetown now.
Yeah.
You won't be Freetown later. And he's already had his run-in with the Pikes, Cobb.
Yep. Yep.
He knows this isn't going to go well. I also think dovetailing back to Boba standing still and being silent is he's no dummy either. He's thinking.
Yeah.
He knows there's someone else leading the Pikes. He knows it's not the mayor.
Right.
He has one real big enemy. He knows he's out for blood, and it's his blood, and that's Cad Bane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here's the thing. As much as we know Cobb would probably trying to rally up his friends, those that are willing and able and to fight, because they have to fight for what's theirs, because what's going to affect one town is going to affect the whole planet eventually.
So
he knows that, and that's going to be his speech. But there's a point here, is that Boba knows something that no one else does. And that is Cad Bane is not to be messed with, and he knows he's coming. He's not stupid. If he gets wind that Boba's alive, which he does, obviously, he's going to come for him. But Cad Bane has got the upper hand, y'all.
Yeah.
The Bad Batch. What does he know that Boba doesn't?
That's right.
Sister.
He's got
you
a
have
sister.
a twin sister.
Yep.
Yes, play on the Vader line.
Yep.
So he has got he's got something in his hat there. He's got a feather in his cap about that one.
Yeah.
And that could be scary, because he could go ahead and do this whole thing about, I killed your sister. Who knows? Whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to make Boba feel? He's all on this kick now with a family, loyalty, kinship. And if he finds out about this, and not to mention Fennec also knows, and nothing was said to him. Like I said, I'm still not 100% sold on her loyalty to Boba.
I'm not either.
Right.
And I would love to see that as the twist. The question that I have for both of you is, do you think that Boba knows about Omega?
I don't think Boba knows yet. No,
I don't know if he does either.
Yep.
I'm going to go with
And I had the thought about Bane because of what we got in Bad Batch. The big connecting point was the fight between Fennec and Bane.
Yep.
And thinking about, where does
and it was over Omega. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where does that play out in real time?
Right, because that weak way with the Marshal, he's shady. The way he was eyeing Cad, and even after it all happened, he's looking, something's up.
Like he knew that
he knew it was coming.
He tipped Cad off, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, interesting. I hadn't thought. I don't know why I didn't think about it, because I loved the Cad Bane episodes of Bad Batch. I love most of the episodes of Bad Batch, but Fennec beat Cad. She beat him.
Yeah,
and she was young. She was just a kid then.
Right. So there's that going. And let me just throw this out there. The people who are not happy with the lightness of the color blue, Cad Bane is like 70 years old now. He's
sunny on Tatooine. There's two suns, and he's a glare.
He's a Duros. It's who knows. But anyway, so I think that's really interesting. So who do you think, is Cad Bane working for somebody at the top of the syndicate, or is he leading the syndicate now? I mean, if Boba worked his way up, maybe Cad. Well, but he wouldn't go out in the desert on his own if he was leading the syndicate. Who's the big bad?
I don't think it's Bane, but I think Bane's working for the big bad.
Yeah,
directly for it.
I'm wondering if this might be
I'm
our
not
introduction.
Be too crazy, but I think there's a matching blue skin tone situation.
Yes, I think so too.
I mean, that's also the easy guess, but that's also the one that seems to make the most sense.
See, Red 5 Mom is in a similar spot as my head goes to, is like the Hutts can't be trusted. I mean, the Hutts.
No, they're not.
Because what's really funny, and I'm sure she's thinking the same thing, when he asked them when Boba gave them the option to leave and relinquish their claim, they never relinquished the claim. They were like, "We're going to leave.
Yeah, we're just going to go.
You can have this Wookiee and this Rancor, but we're not telling you that we're not stepping away from what we believe is ours."
Right.
So it's I don't know if it's the Hutts or not, though. That would be something else.
I don't think it's the Pikes. I think the Pikes are just a tool in the bigger process.
Well, Prince Sizor is back. He's in the comics. It could be very well him. It could be Kira. I'd love that, because Kira would have some sort of bad blood against Boba. After all, he did freeze Han and Carbonite.
Yeah,
she could be still bitter about that.
She lost him in the War of the Bounty Hunters. Spoiler alert to him. So they don't like each other. So here's the thing about that, and this is where, and we talked about it with Patrick Kuttner 2 weeks ago. My sense is that it could be Kira, even though people who don't remember Solo, or people who don't know who Crimson Dawn is, or people who don't know much about that, if you have major star power Emilia Clarke, Mother of Dragons from Game of Thrones, as the head of the Syndicate, that satisfies the mine and Nick's dads of the world, right?
Exactly.
They're like,
Without a
okay,
doubt.
she must be bad. Got it.
Yeah.
And the three of us would be like, there it is. It's awesome. But I don't know. And to your point, Nick, I feel like it might be sort of a reveal at the end to lead to whatever the next part of this story is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
And I think that, again, without being so subtle, I'm saying I think Bane could be connected to Thrawn. I don't think we see Thrawn. I think, I made the joke to Pete on a text message 2 days ago. It could be like Inspector Gadget, like we see like a blue hand on a chair, but we don't actually see him, as a tease in a pseudo Marvel Thanos style, moving us through the story, because we still have the Ahsoka series. Like, we still have stuff ahead of us that I think ties into what you talked about in your op-ed, Pete, a bigger story, a bigger picture. Mm-hmm. But in the short term, a Kira reveal, Bane working with, like, there's ways to go, holy crap, this is a big deal,
right?
Without revealing all our cards right now, next Wednesday morning.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about where we're going. Let's take a look at what we think from predictions. All right, so interesting that nobody has had any idea what was going to happen week to week. The only thing I've gotten right was somehow I guaranteed that we were going to get Cad Bane. I just felt like Filoni.
You did.
Cad
you absolutely.
Bane.
You were on that one 100%.
But that's the only thing I've gotten right ever in any of my Star Wars predictions. So mine are fairly useless. But let's start with our guess. What do you think we're going to see? First of all, is it going to be a jumbo-sized episode, or because there's a lot to wrap up, or is it again as being part of the bigger story? Where's it going to go? So what are your thoughts on what we're going to get next week? Becca.
Oh, me? So I'm listening. I'm like,
You're like, oh, where do you guys think it's going to go?
I don't know. Like, do we want like an Endgame like type, like you know what I mean, like that, where they all come together? And because Boba knows that he needs muscle. He definitely needs. I think he needs more muscle than what he has. To be honest.
Yeah, I think relying on Din and Chrysanthemum is a little bit light. Yeah.
Yeah, and Din is not all focused. I mean, he's got some stuff going on. He's got some baggage. It's so hard. I really do think this is going to play into something else. I mean, because the way I've looked at this one specifically is it's called The Book of Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. And in a book, it could be on a certain topic, but you get different chapters that are telling you other things that are coming along that'll eventually meet up in the middle, right? Or you get interludes that really have nothing to do with what's really going on in the stories for that main character, but it's happening at the same time. So, and that's basically how this entire series for me has gone, just like a book would, and it plays out just like it would. But for Boba, I mean, there has to be some payoff. I know I'm not wrong. There has to be some payoff for this character. He has endured a lot. He has come on a very spiritual journey. Yep. He's not the same man, even though as we watch that, Cad Bane so graciously reminded us that he's a cold-blooded killer that worked with the Empire. Yeah.
Well, I love that because what I loved about that was, for better or worse, that's been the complaint from the Dude Bros, that Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked for the Empire. And that's exactly what he said, and that was, and just the way my God, the voice of what's his name? I can't think of the actor's name. Corey Burton, just so brilliant. But anyway, so yes, Boba Fett he may have been reborn in the desert, left for dead on the sands of Tatooine, but he's got a history. He's not a good guy, right?
Yeah, but he also said to Fennec and to, is it Chrysanthemum? Yes, he said it to him that, take it from me. Don't work for, what do you call them? Slug holes or something?
Yes, skug holes. Yep.
Skug holes.
He's just done doing that. Boba has left, I think, and yes, he's done it. That's his history. He's done some horrible things. Does he deserve forgiveness? I think we're past that. I think he's evolved into something else. And I'm not shocked by this, that he's seeking some sort of a family unit, and that's what I'm going to call it, because he is the DNA of Jango Fett. Jango Fett wanted a foundling. He wanted a son. That's what he did with Boba. The clones themselves considered each other brothers. They were loyal to their brothers. Omega had a chance to have a family with Cut and Sue, and she's like, no, Hunter, you guys are my family. There's an innate, feeling for them to be with each other. So I think Boba's craving this now, and I'm not surprised by it. Whether that means it's found family, which is fine. I'm all, that's what Star Wars is about.
Yes.
But whether he keeps saying, it's been through each chapter when we get to see him, that he wants to rule with respect.
Yep.
Right.
I think he's done with doing all the dirty deeds, you know?
Well, and we get it in the marketing itself, and it brings it back to the very beginning of this episode, and Pete talking about marketing. One of the clips you get of Boba Fett is he says, I'm not a bounty hunter. And then it's cut with him saying, I am Boba Fett. This is a person who's changed. And this is a person who's not who he was in Empire Strikes Back, who he is not at the beginning of, Return of the Jedi. And in those moments, yes. And we do need to ship some Ewoks in.
Yes, we do. But just like Anakin says to Padme, I'm a person and my name is Anakin.
And my name is
Boba.
Anakin. Yeah.
I'm a person. My name is Boba Fett.
We get it very intentionally in the marketing, which I think says something and tells us this story is, again, Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi. This is not going to go the way you think.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But I do feel that there needs to be some payoff, whether it's emotional or, because it has to be. Here's the thing. It's not going to be satisfying, I think, for all of us. It has to be satisfying for Boba. We have to keep that in mind. This is about him. So I think that's the key, is whatever happens, it has to be satisfying for Boba and on his level and on his standards. Right. And there was a comment, I think, by Red 5 Mom that said all the Tuskens are going to come. I can see that happening.
Yeah. I can definitely see that happening. I can see that sort of support as him and the villagers now from Mos Pelgo, who their guy was taken down. Nick, you have an awesome theory that that I want you to share, because I think it's really cool, and it's so out there that I don't know if it's possible, but I also love it because it would be amazing. So.
Well, and like you, and actually you're one up on me because you did get a guarantee of Cad Bane correct. I give you absolute credit for that. None of my theories are ever right, and I live in that. And I honestly, I
don't do them anymore.
I'm glad, but because that means I can just swing for the fences. So the theory that I'm putting out there is Cad Bane kills Boba Fett. And this is an evolution from my theory, because Pete, you and I did a predictions episode on Around the Galaxy right before this all started.
Yep.
And the prediction I put out in that was by the end, Boba Fett dies and there's some other stuff. So I'm coming to that, not in a way that I expected, but still kind of the same thing. Cad Bane kills Boba Fett. Din Djarin assumes Boba Fett's starship because, one, he needs a place for him and Grogu to live and be together. Fennec assumes the new N1, or as I call it, the Din 1 starfighter, because she's an assassin. She needs to be able to get in and out of places quickly, stealthily, whatever. And as a result of those things, that creates motivation going into Mando season 3 for Din and Fennec to avenge Boba, to come behind this legacy that he was attempting to create, and create this new space for something else different. But Boba has served as a transitional character. He has transitioned for these other things that are going to happen, that are going forward in this story that is continuing to move.
And you had also, the piece that you didn't mention is that that the Marshal, Cobb Vanth, gets Boba Fett's armor.
Yes. Marshal gets the Boba Fett armor back. And so there's another symmetry piece, because we've seen it before.
Right.
It makes sense. He's a man of honor. He's somebody who's trying to do right by his town, his village, helping. And so he would also be motivated to help avenge Boba, to help deal with the situation.
And you know what? And they gave 2 mentions of him not having the armor in this last episode.
Yes,
he
they
said,
did.
Cobb said we both lost something that we're fond of. And
and he said, "How are you doing?" He said, "I'm more careful."
Right. And Cad Bane said, "You never should have given up that armor."
Yep. And that's also interesting that Cad Bane knew. He never should have given up that armor.
That's
like
what
that
I'm
was
saying.
a telling moment. So yeah, I again, my swinging for the fences theory revolves around Cad taking out Boba, and then all the kind of fallout and the things that ensue from how that would change.
But if Boba goes out for the right reason, I think that would be, Red 5 Mom was saying fandom would freak out if
sacrificial.
Oh, they're going to freak out anyway.
Yeah,
if that were to happen,
no matter what happens,
it doesn't matter.
In Star Wars, are you sure?
No, fans are always just they accept whatever they're given. I do want to throw one. I want to throw one quick shout out before I forget. Matt from Matt Harrington, who's been with us since the start. Great guy. He thinks Han Solo's coming, but I do want to, and I want everybody to go and watch this after you listen to us. Go watch the opening scene, and I have to agree with them. The Pike who says that spice is worth more than your town sounds just like Liam Neeson, just like him.
Really?
And yeah, go listen to it. And I was like, I don't know, Matt, and then I listened to it and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it sounds just like Liam Neeson. So I don't know, maybe he was working on Obi-Wan and they just pulled him into the sound booth for a minute and said, yeah, but not that it was Qui-Gon, but the voice of could very like Luke, like Mark Hamill being in everything. So
exactly.
There you go.
So yeah, so I don't have any predictions for next week either, other than I think there's going to be a big fight. I think we're going to get some more cameos of the ones that I think we're going to see other bounty hunters and things like that. I think we'll get some of that. But and I guess my last question for all of you is Garza dead? Is she?
She was kind of close.
I think she's a survivor. She has that scar.
Yeah.
She's dealt with some stuff before, and unless you see somebody dead on screen, they're not dead.
Well, and as Alex from Star Wars Explained said, and I'm with him, I've turned around on her. I thought she was a bad guy, but she, when those Pikes walked in, she panicked. She knew something wasn't good. So I don't think she's in league with the Pikes, at least. Probably with somebody. She's always probably putting her chips somewhere.
She's
where
a
she
middle person.
But yeah.
Well, I have one other question, and again, just in the lines of predictions. At the end of Mandalorian season 2, we did get a post-credit scene, which is of course very Marvel, but also set up Book of Boba Fett. So the 2-prong question is: do we get one next week at the end of this? And do you have any predictions if we do, what it might be? Again, Becca, do you have one? Or
yeah, well, I don't have an actual prediction, but yes, I do think we will get that because I think this series actually is the one. Because it was set up for that. I think we will, and I think it'll be a lead into the Ahsoka series because that's happening at the same time, supposedly within the same time frame. And like you said, it may be something as simple as Thrawn's voice or Thrawn's hand or something Thrawn, because you don't just name drop Thrawn,
right, and
then never see of him again. I think that would be interesting. Or maybe it's Grogu. Maybe you just hear the armor, shaking, you hear him putting it on, or you hear the lightsaber light up. I mean, it very well, it could be that choice. We could get that in which I think makes, honestly, probably the most sense, because we're all kind of left on a cliffhanger, like, well, what's he going to choose? So, and I think that would be kind of cool to get that just within like a flash of something, whether it be the armor or just the lightsaber. So,
absolutely.
I'm going to go with
Pete,
that.
what about you?
I was of the mind that that there was going to be sort of like, however the battle ends, somebody from the new Empire was going to be talking to somebody who looks like they're sitting in the Emperor's chair, and they're going to say, it didn't work out, and whoever's in the chair is going to say, well, tell Moff Gideon his plan failed, or something like that, and it's going to turn around and we would see Thrawn. However, I think it might be something that puts Grogu in peril to kick off episode or season 3 of Mando. I've kind of switched around that. Maybe it's a flash over to whatever planet that was, and something's happening to Grogu.
Do you know the name of the planet, Becca?
It looks, if you look at just the the world itself, the planet flying in, it's very similar. I'm not saying it is because I am not working for Lucasfilm. I have no idea. It looks very similar to the last Resistance base that Leia had, that Leia trained with Luke, that Leia trained Rey.
Yep.
It looks like, am I pronouncing this right? Agent Kloss?
Agent Kloss?
Agent
something like
Kloss,
that.
yes. It looks a lot like that. Even the foliage, it looks very similar. So it would make sense. I'm still don't like the line when Ahsoka says there's no safer place than here with Luke. It's like, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's the best.
Ben Solo. You know,
and especially because we get it set up with the building of that temple building that we know we see in Last Jedi, and you know what we know is coming ahead of us.
Right.
For sure.
But
yeah.
I don't know if it's the same place because in the comics was it Greg Peck? The Kylo Ren comics, was that Greg Peck or was that Charles Soule? Charles Soule.
Charles Soule, yep.
It does state that Ben Solo was Luke's first student.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where to go with this. But they
have been known to toss the comics aside, but they've also been known to keep them together. There was actually, I wish I had the tweet, and if I find it, I'll share it. There was an interesting thing. Somebody noticed that the cut in the wipe to the last scene with Luke and Grogu after the explosion in Tatooine, the wipe goes up and it's fire, an explosion that looks very much like when the temple was set on fire from Last Jedi and Force Awakens. So it's like an interesting sort of cut to sort of confirm, if you will, that is the one that Ben Solo destroyed or allegedly destroyed. So
interesting.
So there's that. So that's kind of interesting. So Becca, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Best place they can find me, sadly, is Twitter, because I know it's a cesspool of negativity, but that's where I'm the most active because I have to network all my shows, and I have to go on Twitter. So you can find me directly at YouAreAngelB. But you can also find me on Twitter with Tarkin's Top Shelf at Tarkin's Top Shelf. Also for Kanata's Castle, it's at Castle Kanata. I'm also on Instagram. Everything that I use for me personally is YouAreAngelB. So whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I'm all the same all across the board. But you can hear me every week with Mark Suter at Tarkin's Top Shelf, usually twice a month with Red 5 Mom on Kanata's Castle.
Awesome. Well, Becca, this has been an awesome conversation. We probably could have gone on for much more time. I really appreciate you spending some time with us, and hey, we'll catch up with you after it's all coming.
Yes, I'm curious now to see if that theory on Boba Fett. My son would be really sad, by the way.
Well,
and he
I
would
think
use some very choice words.
First of all, I don't know what just happened. Like, I've been sitting here the whole time and my computer literally just freaked out. So I'm glad I'm back. But yes, I am intrigued by that theory as well. And I just did want to tag on very quickly because I need it to be published somewhere just in case. When we were talking about the post-credit scene, I also think there will be one. You both kind of tend to hover in a continuing the story forward kind of mode. I think I said this to Pete over a text message, maybe even earlier today. I'm going to posit that my post-credit scene is a flashback to Obi-Wan and Chrysanthemum and the Scar. Because we know we have Chrysanthemum, we know we have the Scar, we know we have that from the comic books. And we also know we have the Obi-Wan series coming. And so I think it could be the tiny drop that says, because we've also seen this just in the last couple of days and some Twitter rumblings, if we get a 30, 45 second battle between Obi-Wan and Chrysanthemum that results with a Scar or whatever, and then it cuts to Kenobi coming May 2022 or something like that.
That would be cool.
That's my post-credit drop.
That's great. That's cool. Well, Becca, when the next series comes and we continue doing this, we're going to bring you on to talk about it again if you'll come back.
I'm sorry, but it'll be all about Hayden.
That's all right. Hey, well,
we're here for that.
The moment Hayden shows up on screen, I'm going to text you and say, you're coming on with us this week. And we'll just let you be like full screen you, just talk about Hayden. I get it.
Because I don't feel like guilty anymore, like drooling over him because he's 40 now. So it's like he's not this
Totally
little guy anymore. He's all grown. I'm so happy.
That's so funny.
But my husband says I still can't get a fat head of him. I really just.
Pete and I are going to go in together. We're just going to send you one.
Yeah, we're just going to get one.
Oh my God.
I mean, you can't do anything about it if it just shows up, right?
Right. When we have you on next, we'll expect to see it behind you.
Oh my God, that'd be fantastic. Oh, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so
much fun. Thanks for coming.
You.
Can't wait to see what happens next week. And Nick, may the force be with you.
And also with you.